Our digital lives, they feel so seamless, right? Our banking, our chats, our work, it all just works. But underneath that smooth surface, there's this incredibly complex infrastructure, and it's filled with vulnerabilities that are pretty much invisible. So today, we're going to pull back that curtain and take a look at the hidden threats that are constantly challenging our digital world, from these massive network-wide assaults all the way down to the tiny bits of silicone in our devices.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with a really big question. Is the internet actually built on trust? And, the answer might surprise you because in a lot of ways, it's yes. So many of the core systems that direct traffic and get us all connected were designed with this basic assumption of good faith. They weren't built to second guess every single request. And it's exactly this built-in trust that hackers have become absolute experts at exploiting.
All right, let's start at the top with the most visible kind of attack, the big brute force assault. These are the attacks you hear about on the news, right? When some major service just suddenly goes down for millions of people. It's basically a digital siege on a massive scale.
And the most common form of the siege is the distributed denial of service attack, or DDoS for short. Okay, imagine this. 1,000 fake delivery trucks are all sent to one tiny pizza shop at the exact same time. They block every single road, creating this insane traffic jam. Well, the real customers, the people who actually want pizza, they can't get through. That is a DDoS attack in a nutshell. It just drowns a target server in so much junk traffic that it can't respond to anyone.
So, how does one person pull this off? Well, a single attacker doesn't launch this flood all by themselves. Instead, they use a kind of pyramid scheme. First, the attacker activates a few compromised computers, called handlers. Then, these handlers command a huge army of other infected devices. We're talking laptops, smart fridges, you name it. And that army is called a botnet. At the attacker's signal, this botnet, which could be thousands of devices strong, just unleashes its flood of traffic all at once on the victim. It's a clever way for the real attacker to stay hidden, miles away from the digital chaos they've created. So, we've seen brute force. Now, let's move on to something way more subtle: deception. What if, instead of just blocking the road to that pizza shop, an attacker could secretly change your map and send you to a fake restaurant that looks just like the real one? This is where that idea of trust really starts to break down. To get this, we have to talk about something called the Domain Name System, or DNS. You can think of it as the internet's phone book. Every single time you type a website into your browser, DNS looks up that friendly name, like google.com, and finds the real numerical IP address that computers need to connect. It's this fundamental system that directs pretty much all internet traffic, and it all works because your computer simply trusts the address it gets back from the phone book. But what happens when that trust is broken? Well, that's an attack called DNS cache poisoning. See, to speed things up, DNS servers will temporarily store, or cache, the addresses they've looked up recently. An attacker can actually trick a server into caching a fake address. So when you try to go to your bank's website, the corrupted phone book doesn't give you the bank's real address. Oh no, it secretly sends you to a malicious site that looks identical, all designed to steal your login info. And here's the real kicker. The vulnerability exists because standard DNS doesn't authenticate the responses it gets. It was built to just accept them in good faith. There's no bouncer at the door checking IDs. This just leaves the door wide open for an attacker to feed it a fake response, poisoning the well for every single person who relies on that server. Okay, let's bring the threat even closer to home. We've gone from the network level to the internet's address book. Now let's talk about the main key to our own digital kingdom: the password. To a hacker, your password isn't just a bunch of characters, it's the prize. Now, in the battle days, systems would just store passwords in plain text, just readable text. So if a hacker broke in, they got a master key to every single account. Obviously, a huge security leap forward was hashing. Instead of storing your actual password, the system stores a one-way cryptographic fingerprint of it called a hash. When you log in, it just hashes what you typed and checks if the fingerprints match. Your real password is never actually stored. But of course, hackers are clever. If they manage to steal a whole database of these password hashes, they don't have to sit there and guess your password. Instead, they use something called a rainbow table. This is basically a giant cheat sheet. They've already taken millions of common passwords, calculated all their hashes, and stored them in a huge table. So when they steal a hash, they just look it up in their table and bam, they instantly find the original password. So how in the world do we defend against that? Well, with a really cool technique called salting. Before your password ever gets hashed, the system adds a unique random bit of text, the salt, to it. Think of it like adding a secret, unique ingredient to every single recipe. Now, even if two people use the exact same password, their salted hashes will be totally different. And this makes the hacker's pre-computed Rambo table completely useless, forcing them back to the very slow, very tedious process of guessing one password at a time. We've explored attacks on the network, the protocols, our data, but there is one final layer of threat. And this one is so deep, so insidious, it's almost the stuff of science fiction. This is the ghost in the machine, a threat that's physical, it's hidden, and it is nearly impossible to detect.
I mean, think about it. Software can be patched, networks can be defended, but what do you do when the threat isn't in the code? What happens when it's physically etched into the hardware itself?
This is what's called a hardware Trojan. It is a tiny, malicious modification to a computer chip's physical circuits. The best analogy is a spy being built into the very foundation of a skyscraper before it's even finished. It can be slipped in during the chip's design phase or during its fabrication in some factory, completely unknown to the company that designed it. And because it's baked right into the silicon, no antivirus software in the world will ever find it. What makes a hardware Trojan so dangerous is its two-part design. First, you have the trigger. This is the condition that wakes it up. It could be programmed to activate on a specific date, or after it receives a secret command, or only when a very specific calculation is performed. Until then, it just lies there, completely dormant and invisible. Then you have the payload. That's what it does when it activates, and it could be anything, from leaking encryption keys to completely disabling a critical system. It can sit there for years, passing every single test, just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. So, wow, we've gone on quite a journey, haven't we? From the loud, obvious DDoS attacks, all the way down to the silent, invisible threat of a hardware Trojan. So what does this journey really tell us about our digital world and, more importantly, how we protect it? I think the most crucial takeaway is this. Digital security is not a single high wall. It can't be. It has to be a defense in depth, a whole series of layers. We've seen that threats exist at every single level, from those massive data floods on the network, to the deception in the protocols that guide our traffic, to the theft of our personal data, and right down to the microscopic circuits in the hardware we depend on every day. And that brings us right back to our first question, but now with a whole new perspective. The internet was built on trust, and that trust is now a battleground. As these threats get more sophisticated, more devious, and harder to see, we're left with this one final, lingering thought. In a world full of hidden threats, what can we truly trust?